It's hard to overstate just how big the Backrooms have become. This simple concept, originally posted on 4chan in 2019, has over the years spiraled into a full-on shared mythology, which has had a massive impact on internet culture. It single-handedly kicked off the liminal space trend, it has a subreddit with almost 300,000 members, it's been turned into a highly popular YouTube series that itself is being adapted into an A24 movie, and it's inspired countless video games, the most popular of which has been sold 2 million times. And to think, all of this came from a single image. All of the fan art, imagery, special effects, and video game graphics, they all came from the same tiny arrangement of pixels. And to this day, we have no idea where this picture came from. Countless people have tried to track down the origin of the Backrooms picture. It's probably the holy grail of lost internet media. Chances are you've probably even watched another video in the past about this exact topic. It seems like every few months, someone uploads a new video that goes slightly further into the investigation than the last. I've wanted to make a video about the Backrooms image for a while, but until now, I couldn't really find a good way to do it. I didn't want to just update you guys on the general search effort, I wanted to join the investigation myself. But I wasn't going to make a video if my own investigation didn't amount to anything. And for a long time, it didn't. But now, I think I might potentially have some new information, and there also is definitely a conclusion to this video. But conclusions come at the end, and we're still in the intro, so let's go over a bit of history. The idea of the Backrooms was first introduced on a thread in the X board on 4chan on May 12, 2019. The creator of the thread posted the iconic Backrooms image and asked other users to post disquieting images that just feel off. One user responded to the OP's image with the following description. If you're not careful and you clip out a reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the Backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights and maximum hum buzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has hurt you. Everything about the Backrooms that followed all came from this one post and the weird photo it was describing, and it sure was a strange image. It depicts what could easily be either a room or a hallway wrapped in brown carpet and unusual yellow wallpaper. This area is completely empty, there's no furniture or decor to speak of. There's a wall near the end that doesn't quite reach the ceiling, and also a step draped in what appears to be green shag carpet that could either be the start of a staircase or a different hallway that just happens to be slightly elevated. It's really hard to say what this space is supposed to be, and that's why it's so unsettling. It hits that sweet spot between familiar and unknown in the uncanny valley. Over the following months, a shared lore based around this post would be developed on internet platforms like Reddit, 4chan, and Tumblr. The idea is that this empty yellow space represents a sort of limbo that exists just outside our reality. And just like how you can glitch outside a video game map and fall into an endless void, you can also no-clip into the Backrooms, an endless maze full of dull-looking passageways that both look like everywhere and nowhere. Modern-day purgatory isn't a mountain sticking out of the ocean like in the days of Dante, it's an empty hallway with a drop ceiling. And just like Mount Purgatory, the Backrooms has different levels, but they don't represent sins like in the Divine Comedy. No, the different levels of the Backrooms resembles different kinds of liminal spaces, like abandoned schools, office buildings, pool rooms, airports. There are hundreds of these levels. The Backrooms would continue to gain massive traction over the following years. More and more levels kept being etched into the lore, each one more ridiculous than the last. People began making fan-made video games as well, also of varying quality. In 2022, Kane Pixels, a then 16-year-old amateur filmmaker, would release a massively popular YouTube found footage horror series about the Backrooms, with the first video garnering 57 million views, exposing the Backrooms to an immense amount of people. Chances are you've probably seen this series before, but if you haven't, please go watch it, it's really well put together. A24, a movie studio famous for its art house horror movies, is supposedly currently making a Backrooms movie with Kane Pixels. This sort of online mythology turned Hollywood movie hasn't always turned out well, just look at the Slender Man movie. But A24 is a good studio and Kane Pixels is clearly talented, so I and everyone else have high hopes for this movie adaptation. And no matter how good it is, it's gonna bring even more attention to the Backrooms. While all of this was going on over the last few years, a lot of people behind the scenes are pondering the same question. Where did the Backrooms image originally come from? People started digging. They found an earlier upload of the original photo in a cursed images thread on 4chan that was uploaded on April 22nd, 2018, but that was it. Nobody could find an earlier upload on any site. People weren't really satisfied with this 2018 date for the original image, and for good reason. It doesn't really look like a picture taken in 2018. In fact, it really resembles the sort of images early digital cameras would take. And more importantly than that, people had a hard time believing a space like this could even exist in 2018. It looks like a room ripped right from the 1960s or maybe even the 1950s. As the Backrooms gained popularity, so did the search for the origin of the image. Some thought that maybe the original file name, which was a long number, might actually be a Unix timestamp, which is a way for computers to store dates in the form of a number. When resolved, this timestamp would return July 15th, 2012, which just so happened to be a time when 4chan would actually rename user-uploaded images to Unix timestamps. This led many people to believe that the 2018 upload might have been a repost from July 15th, 2012, so they began digging through 4chan archives to find posts from this date. But after a large search through multiple archives, nothing relating to the Backrooms image came up. The search wasn't only limited to 4chan though. People are out scouring the depths of the entire internet searching for any possible leads, and many were found over the years. One of the first being the Surtech offices. Surtech was a 90s video game developer located in upstate New York that closed down in 2003, with their office building supposedly laying there unused ever since. In early 2020, a rumor started going around that the Surtech office is where the Backrooms photo was taken, with a video on the topic getting 260,000 views. Some people actually went and explored the abandoned office in May 2020, but they didn't find anything. And just a couple days later, some former employees of the company came forward to say once and for all that this was in fact a false lead. About a year later, in April 2021, a user on the Backrooms subreddit would notice a picture of the Backrooms from a slightly different angle than the original image in the Google Maps photos of a place in Georgia called Collins Cold Storage. This would lead to a flurry of calls to the company asking about the Backrooms, which got so bad at one point that the company actually threatened legal action. If you haven't already guessed, the photo upload to Google was a fan-made 3D render. Some people caught this right away, but other users explained it away by posting links to business aggregate sites that also had the photo. But I guess they didn't notice that all the pictures on these sites come from Google and Yelp. A few months later, in December 2021, a new major lead would be discovered. A user posted a vague photo in the Backrooms subreddit saying they might have found the location of the original picture, but only provided the context that it was from a video of someone exploring an abandoned post office. Not much would happen until more than a year later, when in May 2023, another user in the Backrooms subreddit posted the same pictures but with more context this time. These images were from a blog called Scouting New York, and they were part of a series of photos exploring the abandoned James A. Farley post office in New York City. Honestly, the only similarity between the space depicted in these pictures and the Backrooms is that they're both yellow. And according to the official Backrooms Lost Media document, this theory has also apparently been debunked by the photographer who originally took the post office photos. The James A. Farley post office and Collins Cold Storage were the two biggest potential leads, but there have also been a multitude of smaller debunked leads over the years as well. In my opinion, all of the leads that have been found so far haven't been very good. Most of these photos don't share any resemblance to the Backrooms past being empty and sometimes yellow spaces. And even after these leads get debunked, it seems like they still get shared around by people, which brings up a big problem with this particular lost media search, the sheer amount of misinformation surrounding it. In November 2022, a man named Mark Donovan will post on the Backrooms subreddit claiming to have taken the infamous photo in 2001 on a Sony camcorder, but has since handed the camera and SD card down to his son. Not only was no proof or follow-up for this given, but the power outlet in the Backrooms photo is an American plug, and Mark is from the UK. There's also a YouTuber named Sipic who's uploaded several videos with false leads, and probably worst of all, there's this one video by a Brazilian YouTuber named Pedro Cultas telling a made-up story about being secretly given an earlier version of the Backrooms image by some mysterious guy, and then displaying falsified data about the photo. Even though no proof or further explanation was given, users on both the Backrooms subreddit and the Lost Media wiki spread around this false information, and it still persists to this day. Unfortunately, this is more or less where the search currently stands. Every lead so far has been debunked, and a good lead still has yet to pop up. The only useful thing that has been found so far is a slightly earlier 4chan post from another cursed images thread containing the image from April 8th, 2018, a full 2 weeks before what we thought was the oldest post. But even this find doesn't contain any new information that we don't already know. So with all that being said, now that we're up to speed, let's jump into the search ourselves. The first thing I did to look for the Backrooms image is probably the first thing everyone who participated in the search did. I loaded up Google to run an image back search on the Backrooms photo, which will show you visually similar images. Doing this bombarded me with a ton of 3D renders and Backrooms edits, which made the search feel a little daunting. But after refining my search parameters and then trying a few different search engines, I was able to find a ton of uncannily similar photos. But after looking into all of these, nothing quite matched the Backrooms image. The closest match I found was this Japanese art gallery, but there's no wallpaper and the lights on the ceiling don't match. I spent quite a bit of time doing reverse image searches, and while it was fun, I didn't really have a whole lot to show for it. So at this point, I tried a new tactic. I started looking up stuff on YouTube. A neat trick if you want to search for old content on YouTube is to put a before search parameter, and YouTube will only show you results uploaded before a certain date. I tried a few different search queries and time ranges, but it didn't result in any good leads. I stopped doing this not because I wasn't finding anything, but because I took a closer look at the original photo and I realized that if it were a screenshot from an old YouTube video, it would be way more compressed than it currently is. I'm confident that this is an actual photo and not just some screen grab from a video. I was inspired by using search parameters on YouTube, so I decided to try some on Google. I tried narrowing down the results by the dimensions of the photo, and I was also able to add a color parameter as well, so the search would only show me yellow results. Doing this brought up the Backrooms photo basically right away. There were a few leads here, like this house in Ohio with pretty unusual looking rooms, but again, nothing quite matched the Backrooms photo. I tried a bunch of different search queries like basement renovation, store renovation, furniture store, empty office, office renovation, and I actually ended up scrolling to the end of the search results multiple times. It seemed like no matter what I did, nothing brought me closer to finding anything related to this photo. My last Hail Mary was to look through old 4chan archives that are available to download but aren't live on the internet. This also didn't yield any results, and according to the official Lost Media Google Doc, many online and offline archives have been fully searched, and any manpower that I can contribute here probably isn't of much use. After 2 months of searching, I came to a conclusion. Any possible origin for the Backrooms picture or any pictures of the same space don't exist on the surface web, if they ever did in the first place. I'm pretty confident at this point that just doing internet searches is a dead end. With all that being said though, let's switch gears a bit. Just because we can't find an earlier upload than 2018 doesn't mean we can't learn something new about this picture. A lot of people have theorized over the years what this space could be, but there's never been a consensus. Today though, that's gonna change. We're gonna figure out what the Backrooms photo is most likely depicting, and being able to label what this space is might help narrow down the search effort in the future. I think the first thing to tackle here is to make sure this photo hasn't been edited in some way. I took a bit of time to learn about photo forensics. Unfortunately, the really good tools for this are only available to law enforcement services and some private companies, but luckily there are still plenty of free tools out there that still work pretty well. The technique we're going to use to analyze this photo is called error level analysis, or ELA for short. JPEGs are a lossy compressed image format, and because of this, artifacts from the compression process will remain after an image gets encoded for the first time. But each subsequent time that picture is encoded, the amount of total errors will be reduced. So if you download a photo from Twitter and send it to someone over Signal, you're re-encoding the image and decreasing the amount of errors. When analyzing an image with ELA, errors and high contrast edges will show up as bright spots, and spots without errors will show as black. So an image that's been encoded many times will appear to be mostly black during error level analysis. However, if you were to Photoshop that photo and add something to it, whatever new stuff you add will have been through the encoding process less than the rest of the photo. And when looking at it in error level analysis, these Photoshop adjustments will show up as bright spots. If we analyze a photo that hasn't been modified, you can see that the bright spots and the black spots more or less just follow the patterns and edges that exist in the photo. There aren't any surprises. So with all that being said, let's analyze a Backrooms image. We're using the April 8th version from 4chan, which is the earliest known upload. Loading it up, it doesn't actually look as compressed as I might have thought it would be. There aren't really many pitch black areas. I'm noticing a few concerning things, like look at this bottom light here. You would expect the edge of the light to show up as bright since it's a high contrast edge, but it looks like a large space below the light is also bright. Looking at this spot closely, I noticed something kind of weird. It seems like the wall actually dips down around this cluster of errors in a pretty unnatural way. I have a hard time believing this wall actually looks like this in real life. Look, I don't want to make you guys think the Backrooms picture was photoshopped or anything. In my opinion, I would chalk this up to an issue with the camera that took the photo. What would be the purpose of going through the effort to make such a small edit anyways? And besides, we're going to get to something in a minute that's going to pretty much rule out the idea of Photoshop here. One thing I noticed is that there are really a lot of JPEG errors in this photo, which leads me to believe that it hasn't been encoded many times. If we compare it to a later upload of the Backrooms photo, you can see just how much darker it is, which means that there are far fewer JPEG errors. I actually had a hard time finding an image on the internet that had this sort of error pattern. In fact, I even tried resizing a photo that came straight out of an old digital camera that I had laying around, and even that was way darker than the Backrooms photo. If just the process of resizing a photo was enough to show a completely different error pattern, does that mean that the April 8th version of the Backrooms photo is an original copy straight out of the camera? Alright, we're gonna do a little experiment. So I've got this pretty old digital camera here. You might recognize it from my liminal space video. It's a 3.2 megapixel camera, but it also has the ability to take pictures in the same resolution as a Backrooms photo, 0.3 megapixels. So I went to a sort of darkish area in my house and I took a few pictures. The first picture I took is in the same resolution as the Backrooms, 0.3 megapixels, and the error level analysis of that photo looks something like this. And as you can see, the errors here look very much like the errors of the Backrooms picture. There's not many black spots, it's mostly just darkish purple. There's a lot of very small errors, it's very detailed. The second picture I took in the native resolution of the camera, 3.2 megapixels, but after I put it on my computer, I resized it down to match the resolution of the other photo, 0.3 megapixels. So the two photos are of the same scene, the only difference is that one of them was resized. So one picture is an original encode, the other picture has been encoded one time after being taken by the camera. And as you can see, the errors here are completely different. This error level analysis is much darker. There's much less fine-grained errors. The errors here are much bigger. And you know what that means? The April 8th version of the Backrooms photo is an original encode. It hasn't been modified in any way, which means that if it was uploaded anywhere before the 2018 date, it would have only been on a site that doesn't modify or compress photos, like 4chan. Let's look at it like this. Both of these photos came from the same camera. The darker one was merely resized to match the Backrooms' 0.3 megapixel resolution, whereas the purplish one was originally taken at 0.3 megapixels. If merely resizing a photo without compressing it was enough to change the error pattern so drastically, then any sort of encoding or compression added by a website would likely change it even more. To really make sure I was right about this, I even tried merely encoding the image without actually adding any compression or changing anything visually, and there are still way less errors here than both the original photo and the Backrooms photo. Combining this information with the Unix timestamp, we can deduce that this photo most likely only ever lived on 4chan before 2018. It's not a real estate MLS photo or a picture from some kind of home renovation site or an urban exploration blog. It was a photo taken by a 4chan user. There's one more thing we can tell by doing error level analysis, and that is that this photo is not computer generated. When analyzing a rendered photo for errors, you'll find what's called rainbow errors, which are much simpler and bigger bright spots. In the Backrooms photo though, there's nothing like that. This is a real space. Okay, so what else can we tell by looking at the photo? Well, we already talked about the Type B outlet. The general consensus I see in the lost media community is that this narrows down the location to countries that use Type A or B outlets. But we can easily narrow down this list even further. A lot of people bring up Japan as a possible location, but in reality, almost all outlets in Japan are Type A. Type B plugs with the grounding pin are incredibly uncommon. So that just leaves North America and some of South America. But in Latin American countries, wall-to-wall carpets are very rare. This means that the Backrooms picture most likely comes from one of two countries, the USA or Canada. Another thing I and many others have noticed about the photo is the color temperature. The white balance is really off here, and this room most likely doesn't look this yellow in real life. If we adjust the hue and the white balance to be more neutral, the photo comes out looking like this. This looks a lot more like a real place now, but just what kind of place could this possibly be? The first theory passed around online as to what the Backrooms photo might be depicting is that it's the backroom of a Sears, hence the name. This isn't a bad theory, but every picture I could find of a backroom at a Sears or any other department store for that matter don't have wallpaper on the walls, no matter which era the photo is from. And Sears stores all seem to have very high ceilings judging by these pictures, which contrasts with the low drop ceiling of the Backrooms photo. Some people have theorized that this photo could be depicting the basement of either a house or a church, but personally, I don't think so. If you look closely by the right-hand wall, you can just make out two other walls poking out from behind it, which would give the room a layout sort of like this. And I've never seen anything like this in any house or a church before. This strange floor plan would also remove an old conference center from the list of possibilities, because they all seem to have large open rooms without permanent interior walls. The most plausible but still likely wrong theory I've read online is that this space could be an office under renovation. This seems to be the most popular theory I've read about the Backrooms online, and I think a lot of the search effort seems to either focus on browsing 4chan archives or looking up old office real estate listings. It's not a wild theory. These walls could be cubicles, that ceiling with the fluorescent lights looks like something you would see in an office, and some people say that the long wooden pieces on the walls could be chair bumpers. But I still don't think this theory is correct for a couple reasons. For one thing, those bumpers are way too low for any office chair that I've ever seen, and I haven't been able to find a single picture of an office with permanent dividing half walls. The modern office cubicle was invented in 1967, and they've always been movable dividers that aren't permanently fixed in place. And before office cubicles, most offices typically had open floor plans without dividers. And there's also only one power outlet that we can see in this entire room. Even an old office would have had power outlets every few meters for lamps or typewriters. And probably the most damning of all is the wallpaper. I don't know about you guys, but I've never seen any office have wallpaper. I searched for pictures of office spaces in every decade for the last 100 years, and not a single one of them had wallpaper at all. Nonetheless, 5 different kinds, which is also kind of weird, isn't it? Why would someone go to the trouble of putting up so many different kinds of wallpaper in the same room? Well, that's actually going to lead us to the most likely solution. But before we get there, I decided to learn how to use Blender so I could recreate this space in a 3D environment. Huge thank you to Inward3D on YouTube for his great Backrooms Blender tutorial. I was able to replicate almost all of the image without having to do much guesswork except for the space around the green step. And this is what it looks like. Most of the reason I did this was so I could see those walls on this previously unseen side of the room. What could possibly be the reason for these funny little spaces? Well, the reason is because the Backrooms was most likely part of an old furniture store. What other kind of place would have 5 different kinds of wallpaper in one room except for a furniture or home decor store? The spaces between the half walls probably would have contained different pieces of furniture, and the bumpers on those walls were likely there to protect the wallpaper from the backs of couches and armchairs. Most furniture stores tend to have these little half walls for the purpose of containing display rooms, and the walls are either painted different colors, or more commonly in older furniture stores, they're donning different wallpapers. It's also worth mentioning that there's no discolored or marked up areas in the walls, which means nothing must have hung on or covered them for very long, which is unusual considering these wallpapers look like they're from the 60s or even the 50s, but in the context of a furniture store, display rooms would be getting constantly moved around as old furniture gets sold and new furniture gets stocked, so this might actually make sense. And that little green step, it's possible that it could be part of some big raised display room, which aren't uncommon in furniture stores. I really think the Backrooms are part of a furniture store. I can't think of a better explanation. I thought maybe it could be part of some art gallery like that Japanese look-alike photo we talked about, but I couldn't find a single art gallery that had wallpaper on the walls. And also, how would we explain the wooden bumpers in that case? No, a furniture store is the only explanation that makes sense. In the original draft of this script, this was going to be where the conclusion was, but as I was writing it, something kind of interesting happened. While I was getting ready to film this video, a user in the Backrooms subreddit would post what is probably the best lead to date. It's a photo that looks really similar to the Backrooms. The general layout appears to be the same, with the doors, back walls, lights, and left corner all being in similar spots. And what do you know? It's a furniture store. This was an exciting lead, and many people thought that the Backrooms location had finally been found. The Reddit post led me to the Virtual Carbon Discord server, which is a place where the Backrooms search effort mainly congregates, as well as the Kane Pixels Discord server where the photo was originally posted. Only a few people had the actual address to the store in the photo, and they weren't sharing with others to avoid another Collins cold storage situation, but I was able to figure out the location through a bit of online detective work. I began doing some research on the store where this photo was taken, and that's when my excitement died down a bit. The store first opened up in 1999, and they obviously didn't put up the 60s wallpaper that you see in the Backrooms photo. But the semi-permanent half walls in the new picture were obviously set up by a furniture store. They wouldn't serve any other purpose. So the only way that this could be the Backrooms photo would be if this store just so happened to open up in the same building where a different furniture store used to exist, while keeping just some of the display walls and not others. Obviously this is possible, but I couldn't find anything online about a different furniture store ever existing in this building. There were also numerous inconsistencies between the two photos discovered by others. Everything seemed similar at first glance, but when you would look closer, you would see that pretty much nothing was really in the same spot at all between the two photos. While I and the other searchers were discussing all of this in the virtual Carbon server, a Backrooms YouTuber named Brugly uploaded a video telling the world that they found it, obviously referring to the Backrooms location. In this video, Brugly shows his audience the Reddit post with the furniture store picture and then speculates for 10 minutes about which store the photo could be showing, even though in his video he scrolled past a comment by the guy who took the photo saying that he doesn't want the location to be public. Now, if Brugly really wanted to know the location for himself, he could have just asked a photographer on Reddit. But instead, in his video, he showed off a store called Sam's Carpet Furniture as a potential location for this new lead. Which is not the right place at all, it's a completely different store. While Brugly's video was exposing this new lead to hundreds of thousands of people, me and the rest of the search team were working to verify if the lead was valid or not. We sent a couple emails that went unanswered, so we instead decided to organize a call with a business, which would hopefully give us an answer once and for all. I ended up being the one doing the talking on behalf of everyone else, and this is how it went.
Okay, yeah, no, unfortunately this doesn't resemble any one of our stores at all. Any of our 8 locations, none of them look any similar to this.
Alright, yeah, that's fine. That's all I need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. This was a pretty confident and definitive no. There wasn't any contemplation or consideration. It was no, none of our stores look like this at all, not now or ever. After this, we updated the lost media document with the new information, and I did my best to spread the word on Reddit that the furniture store lead was a dead end. But my efforts didn't accomplish very much. Brugly's video continued to rake in views, and people began investigating Sam's Carpet Furniture, which, I will remind you, is not even the store in the picture. One Reddit user even visited the store saying they couldn't find where the photo was taken. I wonder why. While this video has a conclusion, it doesn't have a definitive one. I do personally think the Backrooms are part of a furniture store, and I have quite a few reasons to back that up, but it's still not a definitive answer because we still don't know where this photo came from. It certainly didn't come from this store, nonetheless Sam's Carpet Furniture. Currently the search effort remains rife with misinformation and false leads, but some people are still doing their best to find out where this picture came from. The overall effort at the moment is focused on searching through unexplored 4chan archives to find an earlier upload of the photo. And while this furniture store lead may have been debunked, I hope it puts a larger focus on looking into furniture stores in general. There are currently 60,000 such establishments right now in the US, and I can't look all of them up on my own. But what do you guys think? Do you agree with my deductions? Am I totally off base? If you want to contribute to the Backroom search yourself, I recommend joining Virtual Carbon's Discord server and talking to the people there. Alright guys, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.